Hi, everybody. Krista, that curious cat here. Thanks so much for joining me tonight as I continue this journey into the high controlled group or cult that is Scientology. Please like and subscribe if you're interested in joining me on this journey into this discovery of mine. Tonight, I'll be speaking with Scientology whistleblower and propagandist Mitch Brisker. Sorry about that. After 3 decades of working in Scientology, Mitch created films, ad campaigns, designed exhibitions. He was finally able to disentangle himself and tell his story in his new book, Scientology, The Big Lie, How I Made an Evil Cult Look Good. Previously the chief architect of Scientology's global propaganda machine, Mitch has described Scientology as an international crime scene happening in real time, folks. In real time. Links to Mitch's book can be found in the video's description. Please add any questions or comments. We'll try to get to those at the end. And without further ado, please welcome Mitch Brisker.
Hello, hi, Krista.
Mitch.
Hi, Krista. So, yeah, thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it. It's
No,
nice to be here.
Thank you for doing this. This is so great.
No problem. No problem. It's nice to be here in real time with you. So
yeah, really. The whole live thing is new to me. So, I hope with practice I'll get better at this. So I appreciate you taking the dive with me here.
No problem. I think you're doing great. I love what you do.
You.
I've seen you with Sterling. You ask great questions.
Thank
so
you.
I'm enthusiastic.
Great. So one of the things that really, I mean, for many viewers that have seen my previous interviews with Sterling, I've done 4 with Sterling and with Chris Malin from the UK. One of the things that I really want, I feel very, very passionately that Scientology needs to go. I think it's an abusive organization. And I want to educate, because there's a lot of people that don't fully understand Scientology, anything about it. I have conversations in public with people and they, like, what's Scientology? They might have heard the word, but they don't fully understand it. So the SPTV community just elates me to no end, because I think it's so informative and it's bringing more awareness to the organization and what it does, what it's like, what it's about, how easily people can be lured into high control groups. Because there is a misconception with that. Most people, like, I don't know if you watched the NXIVM. Do you know anything about NXIVM? Did you watch those?
I did. Yeah, I followed the trial.
Yeah.
And then I watched the show.
What was fascinating to me about NXIVM is I walked in blind. I was actually with my mom. Hi, Mom. She's probably watching. We sat down and watched episode 1. And when it was done, I looked at my mom and I'm like, where is this organization? Because I should work for them. Like me working in the corporate world, I'm coach. I coach team members. I inspire them to reach their best self, achieve their goals. I was fully bought in. I thought it was brilliantly done. And then episode 2 comes and it was a total WTF moment. Like, I probably paused it halfway through with my mom and was like, oh my God, they just lured me in to this. So I think there's this misconception about who is attracted to or lured into high control groups. And I'm trying to have different conversations with various ex-Scientologists about what lured them in, what their particular experience was, just because everybody's perspective seems to be so varied straight across the board. There's no level of abuse or trauma that supersedes another's. There seems to be trauma straight across the board and just negative experience. And I really want to try to educate the public on those experiences. So can you please share with the viewers tonight exactly how, because yours is a very unique experience, because you grew up in Hollywood, right?
I did. West Hollywood. Yeah, I grew up in Laurel Canyon and Hollywood Hills.
I
was originally, I just want to say, I was originally, a shout out to all my friends from Northern California. I was originally from San Francisco. I was born in Oakland, moved to Laurel Canyon when I was about 8 years old.
Right. So this is in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s.
Back around the time when dinosaurs walked the earth. That's right, Krista. You nailed it.
You know what? I'm so envious as a music lover. I'm so envious. Like to be able to go see Bob Dylan, the Doors, the Byrds. Like, I could just go on and on and on forever about the bands that you would have been able to experience. So
that I did experience. I mean, we used to hear the Byrds rehearsing on Cass Elliott's deck on the weekends, from my parents' home.
You did,
yeah, for real.
So
Yeah, it
cool.
was just
So
like
cool.
that. But yeah, it wasn't cool at the time. Maybe it was cool, but in terms of growing up in the 60s, I mean, no problem revealing my age. It's not a dating site, so that's okay. So, but yeah, I was around back then. So anyway,
So
I've
from
written about it. The
there,
first 3 chapters of my book. If you're interested in that time period, if you're interested in the culture of the 60s, especially in southern and in LA and the Bay Area, you'll enjoy the first 3 chapters.
yeah, I
And the rest
bet.
of it you can use as a flotation device on your next flight, overseas.
So you
Sorry.
were in that kind of, you're doing the music scene, you went into
Right,
film school,
right.
and then you had kind of a bit of a detour, and that
Yeah, yeah,
eventually led you to through working on,
yeah.
do you want to
It
share just a
oh,
brief stint on that?
I'm an open book. I mean, a funny thing is, I mean, I think the first time I did heroin, I was 15 years old. Uh, and that's take a drink every time I say my book, but that's really well detailed in my book. Take a drink. Okay, good. So yeah, I was 15 years old, and I ended up like other sort of middle class kids growing up in progressive homes in Laurel Canyon. I ended up with a drug habit by the time I was, I don't know, 17, 18 years old. I mean, I, I, I didn't make it out of high school without problems from addiction.
Right.
So yeah, anyway, so yeah, that's right. I ended up, so by the time I got into Scientology, I was a 23-year-old, a film school dropout, addicted to heroin. I'd woken up a week before Christmas, and I went into my kitchen, and my girlfriend had died of an overdose, and we had been involved in a feature film, and the
Hmm.
director of the film had just started doing Scientology, and he brought me into Celebrity Center, thinking it might help me. That's how I got into Scientology.
Right.
And
So what
it's kind of difficult. It's a little. If I could just add, you're right to ask how did you get into Scientology, because that's what everybody wants to know.
mhm,
Some people, they how they got into Scientology is their brand, like
yep,
growing up in Scientology, like that, or something like that, or born into Scientology. You don't have to ask any more questions about how
right.
they got in. But in my case, because I was not born in, I was brainwashed in, which
Hmm.
is its own set of problems.
Yeah,
Um, and because of the circumstances, I kind of have to give that soundbite that I was a 23-year-old heroin addicted film school dropout. You know what I'm
right.
saying? So
So was this like, did Scientology have Narcanon at that point? Like, did you
no,
you didn't go through that process? Because I
no,
think I heard some rumblings that I think there's a misconception that that might have been your path in.
no, there was no Narcanon. Actually, that's not completely true. Narcanon was started by an inmate by the name of Willie Benitez,
Hmm.
he'd read, I've done a lot of work for Narcanon. I actually was responsible for writing much of the current Narcanon program. So, which I,
Right.
I did as a repayment of debt to Scientology, because I thought they had way more to do with my recovery than they did.
Hmm.
That's part of unpacking what Scientology is and is not. Uh,
Right.
Anyway, he read an L. Ron Hubbard book, and he thought that that what Hubbard was describing in terms of man's potential could be used to help people free themselves of drugs. And then this program grew up around it, around that idea, and they sort of always put William Benitez as the founder of it, which he was. But eventually, in the modern day, David Miscavige has expunged Willie Benitez's name from the records. He no longer exists in the history of Narconon. So there was one Narcanon, but when I went to Celebrity Center, they said that that's just where like felons go, ex-cons,
Oh, I
inmates,
see.
because it was just really guys on parole and blah blah blah. It was pretty funky. But so yeah, I never went there. Strangely enough, they took me in, and I lived with them for 6 weeks, which is, you talk about my story being unique. I mean, I can't even talk about it because I keep. I'll turn that off. I keep. Or some people, yeah, I know. Some people think I'm an evil cult leader. I mean, an evil. What's the word? Like in a James Bond movie, like an evil villain, like a super villain,
Oh,
because I'm in
I
my
don't
little
think
cave
you're a
and stuff.
super
No,
villain,
no, no,
Mitch.
no, no, no. It's a joke. It's like there's a failed meme that Mitch Brisker is a super villain. But anyway, no, but anyway, they took me in, and I lived with them for practically no money, and they sort of took care of me for 6 weeks. And they're a very anti-drug group, and
Yep.
and and fortunately at that time, they were the head of the woman who founded Celebrity Center. There's a woman by the name of Yvonne Junch, Sea Org member, or original Sea Org member from Australia, who worked with Hubbard on the Apollo. She's the one that founded the Starship Celebrity Center. Okay,
And what
and
year would that have been around?
when she founded it, it was in the '60s,
Okay. Okay.
like late. I would guess around 1968. I would guess. I mean, I was there in '73, and it was a pretty new place. But Bond was a very caring person. This is a fluke. This is not some. This is not some tale about what Scientology needs to go back to,
Hmm.
because everything about it is written into its DNA. But this woman was a very caring woman. She really cared about artists, and she was the commanding officer, and really the mother of Celebrity Center. And those people really took care of me. Eventually, Hubbard didn't like the power she had,
Hmm.
and he removed her, gave her a really crappy job, and she died in her 50s of a brain tumor. It was very tragic.
Oh, that is tragic.
So yeah, but I was really lucky because I was there at a formative time. There's a lot of people my age and older who will tell
Mhm.
you, they'll speak very fondly about it. Yvonne, her daughter Janice Grady has a channel with Mark
Yeah.
Fisher. So if you
Yeah.
ever want, I've spoken with her about her
Yeah.
mom. I knew Janice.
I'm familiar with Janice and Mark. Yeah. They have a
Yeah,
great
so
channel.
yeah, Janice is Yvonne's daughter, and I did know her back then. I knew her a little. She was about, I don't know, younger than I, but so yeah, that's how I got it. It was a whole different scene. I was there for 6 weeks. Then I went
Mhm.
back to college. I had taken a leave from California Institute of the Arts, which is not an easy school to get into, and so I was contacted and told, if you don't come back, you're gonna have to reapply. And I'm like, ah. So and I was gotten off of drugs, so I went back to college, and then my attachment to Scientology, my engagement, kind of lessened. I got a degree. I got out. I got work. I worked for really good companies. I was directing commercials and doing visual effects and all kinds of crazy stuff. And then as time went on, I was contacted by somebody in LA
Mhm.
from the marketing division of Scientology to come in and work on the Dianetics campaign. And that's how I started working for the church.
Gotcha. So you were what I guess many would call a public Scientologist.
Well, it doesn't matter who would call it. That would be the accurate description. Yeah, I was a
Okay,
public
there you go.
Scientologist.
So yes, I mean,
Yeah,
in
and
terms of
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
SVP, like
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
never
yeah,
inners like myself that don't understand, we're starting to get very familiar with the Sea Org members.
yeah,
So you were a public Scientologist that
yeah,
just
yeah. So
happened to be
yeah,
employed by Scientology.
yeah. I didn't. Yeah, happened is an odd word description of it. But yeah, I happened to be. Yeah,
Yeah,
that I was a public Scientologist who the church hired because I had unique skills that they needed.
gotcha.
And the reason why they needed those skills is less about me and more about the failings of L. Ron Hubbard.
Which
So,
fascinates me. So talk
yeah,
to me a little
because
bit about the
pretty much anybody
inception.
in my graduating class at CalArts could have gone up and done that job. So,
Right.
anyway.
Gotcha. But you had that connection with the previous director from that movie, right? So that makes sense
Yeah,
how
and
you
he was like a celebrity at CC because he
gotcha.
had, yeah, he made some films, and I made a film. I was in a film that he made, and so
So talk to me a little bit about like so you worked at Golden Era Productions.
I did.
So talk to me a little bit about the inception of that department. Obviously, L. Ron Hubbard started that. This isn't a Miscavige thing. L. Ron Hubbard started
Oh yeah,
that.
no, no, no. Yeah, this no, no, yeah, no. This was, he started it specifically to make films. Golden Era Productions was, they used to refer to it as, this is Ron's cine work. In other words, it's Ron's studio. You know, they like to
Okay.
call L. Ron Hubbard Ron just because it's like, cult leaders need a warm fuzzy kind of name. So
And what was the end goal? Like who were these like in Hubbard's mind, who were these films for?
well, that story starts in 1963. Okay, so I'll make it short,
Oh, go
but
for it.
there's a
Share
lot of
it with all of us.
there's a lot of moving parts.
Okay.
Let me see. In 1963, he was running Scientology international headquarters out of Saint Hill, England, right?
Okay.
And he was kind of dabbling in audiovisual tools as training aids. He was setting up closed circuit TVs. Listen, if you were in high school, let's say in 1963, the audiovisual tools at that time in your high school would be better than whatever L. Ron Hubbard had. But because he was doing it, it was like, worship time. So he was dabbling with these. And one day he gave this a filmed lecture. He had someone set up a camera in his back patio at St. Hill. He lived in this St. Hill Manor, which was this
Right.
castle that he bought from, stately manor,
Yeah.
not
I've
a
seen
castle.
pictures. It's quite impressive. Yes.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. He bought it from the
Yeah.
Maharaja of Jaipur for a lot of
Mhm.
money, which he borrowed from his best friend, who also shot that lecture I'm talking to you about. And then he later declared that guy as suppressive and kicked him out of the church, so he didn't have to pay him back.
He
So
did not,
yeah,
Mitch.
he did. Yeah, Hubbard's got a long history of
What a
scamatology.
bugger. I mean,
Yeah,
sorry,
exactly.
Chad. What? I
Well,
mean,
you're in
that's
England, so can
horrible.
you translate that for us Americans?
No, well, see, I'm from Newfoundland, Canada, so bugger means just what a little shit. I mean, that's awful.
Okay, so back to our story.
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, that was a little rabbit hole. So, and in this lecture, he said that science. He loved to say things like that. He's pontificating, lording over the lordly estate, and he walks out and he's in his perfectly pleated tweed pants and his hunting jacket, and he's got a tweed hat on and looking like the landed gentry, and he swings a leg up on this wall and he like starts pontificating, and he said Scientology is. I remember this by heart. I think Scientology is only going to go as far as it's correctly taught, and you
That
can
makes
only
sense.
teach.
Yeah,
And you can, yeah, of course, he said a lot of things that made sense,
yeah,
and you can only teach it if people. You can only learn it if people can see how it's done, and they can only see how it's done if you have film. So basically, he declared that Scientology was not going to expand. It was not going
mhm,
to really exist without having training materials that were filmed that would show people how to do the it's the fake counseling that they call auditing, right?
right.
And so there's more on that, but skipping over what auditing is, it's Scientology counseling. Per Hubbard, it's a very precise technology. I mean, it does need to be exactly per his instructions, or it just won't work. But that's how they blame people, because they can always say, "Well, it didn't work. It's your fault. You didn't do it
Right.
right. It wasn't the right thing."
Yeah, they
So
lean
anyway,
on that a lot, don't they?
yeah, they do. That's one of their touchstones.
Mhm.
So he made that. What I don't exactly know what he. Let me see. Right after that, he went to Rhodesia. Then in spite of his sympathy with the apartheid government, they still deported him for some reason. I don't remember exactly. I think they thought he was a scam artist or something. They kicked him out
The
of the country.
UK.
No, in Rhodesia, which is
Oh,
now
sorry.
Zimbabwe. Yeah, but
Gotcha.
he needed to get the hell out of UK anyway, because they were closing in fast there.
Yeah.
The real
He's
reason he went
having
to
some
Zimbabwe.
trouble, like, Scientology's in some trouble in the UK right now anyway,
Yeah,
so I
I know,
think
but
he's had
that's
a
nothing new. Yeah, that's nothing new.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, they have Scientology gets away with a lot in the U.S. because of the
the
religious
tax
protections.
evasion.
But
Yeah,
I mean, everybody in America is like armed and like it's like
yeah.
there's all kinds of crazy shit going on here. So it's not surprising. And a lot of us enjoy the benefits of the freedoms in this country of democracy that are also exploited by some. But it's
Of
kind of
course.
like, to protect the democracy, you have to allow a certain amount of freedom. But we're not going to do politics. So
I will save that for another day, Mitch. I could
yeah.
do that
So
for hours.
anyway, I don't really off the top of my mind know the exact steps. I do, but I'd have to stop and think about them. But he ends up, so he goes back from Zimbabwe. He goes to St. Hill. He starts the Sea Org. He goes off to sea. Then they go to Florida.
Mhm.
Then from Florida, I think from Florida, I know I'm going to have all the Scientology, historians on my back, but I don't really care. Send your notes to Krista. Okay, no, it's her
Thanks,
podcast.
Mitch.
Yeah. So anyway, but he ends up in this place in the desert called La Quinta, and he's there
Okay.
with a bunch of messengers. I think Mike Rinder was there. I think Janice was there. I know David Miscavige was there. He was 16 years old. All the messengers were there, and then some
Yeah.
other people that probably, did the gardening and washed the bottles and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So then there's a raid, and then he decides while he's at La Quinta that he's going to start writing these films. And it's kind of a
Okay.
funny story, but what happens is there's a raid by the FBI. We've all heard about that, Operation Snow
Yes.
White.
Snow White.
And
Yeah.
they raid the LA office and the Boston office.
Mhm.
And
And
so
that's the one where Hubbard's wife ended up in jail.
yeah, Mary Sue, she went to
Yeah.
prison for 11 years. He never talked to
Yeah.
her again. And a lot of us know people who were in that group. It's called the
Mhm.
Guardian's office. I didn't
Yeah.
have any friends in the Guardian's office because when that was all happening, I was not hardly involved in Scientology. I was taking some
Right.
courses occasionally. And I know some of the Sea Org members, ones that are speaking out now, some of the vociferous ones, were raised by parents who were in the Guardian's office. So
Yeah.
that's probably a very special circumstance. So nonetheless, Hubbard is worried about being he's worried about being apprehended by the FBI. He takes off to Sparks, Nevada. He's hiding out there, and he compiles a list of books that would be your basic, A-level film school syllabus. Pretty easy to find. Books on
Right.
editing, lighting, sound, all that stuff. And he sends this list back to his HQ in La Quinta, and he says, study these books. We're going to make films, right?
Right.
So then he comes back and he writes 26 films. These are the training films, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the way he did it was he sent out a message. He said, I want folders, auditing records from the church in Los Angeles. I want to look at them. I want to see how people are doing. And so then he pulls a bunch of auditors from LA up there. And he
Well,
discovers,
that makes sense from a business perspective, that you're going to focus on the areas that need the most attention.
Absolutely. Yeah,
that makes
absolutely.
sense.
I mean, Hubbard was like really good at setting things up, but then he always ended up, he was. I mean, come on, the guy left a fortune. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. Yeah, he was not a bad businessman. I mean, the original Hubbard Dianetics Foundation went bankrupt, and he did lose the right to publish his own book, which he later got back. And and the church has had tax exemption twice and lost it once.
Yes.
So, yeah, yippee!
We're celebrating, Mitch.
We're celebrating church use. Okay, you know what? I'm going to turn that off right now. Anyway, so
it's quite fun.
Yeah, okay, fine. I'll leave it. Okay, so anyway, so now they're in Sparks, Nevada, and they have the space. It's an old date farm on the estate that he bought, and they have an old packing plant, and they turned it into a studio. It's horrible. It has a low ceiling and a lot of metal posts that they wrap in aluminum foil to try to hide them. And they make these horrible films. I mean, I cannot describe. There's not words. We don't have words in the English language to describe that low quality of work. We would have to invent brand new words. We would have to create hyphens or weird new words because there's no description of that low quality work. So they managed to make 19 of these films. Everybody knew they were shit, but when you were a student on a course, you sort of held your nose because the films contained information.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them, at least they were not, because Hubbard was like a fiction writer, and he wrote like potboilers and dime novels and stuff. So he knew how to write sort of kind of cute, funny, humorous, engaging. And so he did a lot of plots that would, we'll talk about this later, but there's a crazy guy who gets picked up on a planetoid and needs an auditing session. So, the chaplain on the spaceship is an auditor, and, he sort of do all these, it's like an angel looking for a guy who promised to reform, and she can't find him in the graveyard. And it turns out he's in hell. So she goes and meets the devil. A lot of them were really fanciful. Right?
Well, he definitely had a wild imagination. I think he has written more science fiction books than any other author in history.
Yeah, but not more worth reading, because I've read a couple of them and I was not a fan. I had read a lot of things, but I'd read a lot of science fiction before I went. Before I was introduced to Hubbard's science, and he wrote one book that I thought was decent and could actually be made into a film, but his work was trashy. They were potboilers. They were written for popular taste. They had they had one audience, his loyal fans, and people who liked, Buck Rogers, gangbusting kind of stories, right?
Right.
But anyway, yeah. So he wrote these films, and they started producing. They were really bad. Yeah, we covered that. And so they've got 19 of them, which means they're missing 7. And so this means that the training of auditors, which is the most important thing in Scientology, it used to be before Miscavige turned it into a donor-based operation.
Yes.
Right? Like before he looked at the Mormon Church and said, "What the hell am I doing? People are suing me for breaking promises, and these guys are just getting 10% of everybody's income." So he's like, "I want to do that." So
is that where that kind of brainchild came from? Was just
As
evaluating?
far as I'm concerned, oh yeah, I think it was specifically the Mormons, because he made enough comments to me over the years, and when we were setting up Scientology Media Productions, because I was I played a key part in that because I was the senior director there, and I did a lot of the messaging and the mission statement and
Yeah.
sizzle reels and all that kind of stuff. And he sent us up to BYU TV, which is the Mormons broadcast center, while we were setting it. Well, he was having his broadcast center set up. So he's like, "Yeah, go up there, take a look, see what they're doing." And they have a beautiful setup there, and they're very gracious. They welcomed us, and it was kind of pissed me off because the Scientology didn't return the favor. They really needed. They didn't even extend the offer. But the Mormons, they're very warm, receptive people, and they were really thrilled to have us there. Oh my God, there's another cult that's going to start a TV station. They have their issues as well.
They do.
But anyway, so my point is, like, he did, like, the Mormons had gone to Discovery Channel and modeled their facility after one of the Discovery studios. So he didn't send us to the Discovery studios. He sent us to the Mormons. Anyway, but it was a fun day off, just flying up to BYU. And
right.
my former in-laws are all Mormons. So a lot of them are Mormons. So, Mormons, half Scientologists. So I had been in that area. I was familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I might have had a couple of former in-law children, siblings, whatever, who were students when I was up there at the time at BYU. So yeah, it was there was a number of things. The way I mean, I talked about this with Celise Ansola, on Cults to Consciousness.
Yep.
I did a thing with her about how much Miscavige is inspired by the donation model of the Mormon Church. So there's a lot of good information there. But I had numerous conversations with him, a lot of one-on-one conversations about the way that the Mormon Church, the organization, not the religion, is set up to engage all of its members. Like, they have what they call these, I can't remember the name. I'm always, it's a stake. They have like these fields, and they have like a stake, and they have like bishops, and it's all secular. They don't have a Sea Org. Their religion is all secular.
Well, I mean,
except
it
at the
depends on
very
if
top.
you're talking about LDS or if you're talking about FLDS, which the
there's no such thing as FLDS. We're not supposed to talk about
there
that.
is that compound which had tax exemption and religious freedom, which
no. I'm just saying that in Scientology, there's a quote unquote priesthood.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Which is has a billionaire contract and wears uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing like that in Mormonism.
Right.
Like, everybody has a day job except for the guys at the top.
Yeah.
I had a former uncle-in-law who was a bishop. He sold insurance. I mean, but within his parish, whatever they call it, he was a bishop. So Miscavige set up a similar thing. The way the donations are organized around these quote unquote ideal orbs, these church buildings, that they buy these prestige. He used to refer to them, Miscavige used to refer to them as statement buildings. And the way that they organize the local public is very much the way Mormons are organized around their local church. Like, you have these people that are called OT ambassadors, OT operating Thetan, part of the Scientology nomenclature. Those OT ambassadors, they would be the equivalent of a bishop in the Mormon Church, okay, who would also have a day job. So it's really similar. And they have moved from a service-based model where they sell auditing and books and things like that, mostly auditing, to a donation-based model. And, I mean, they have supposedly $3 billion that Mormons, I mean, they have some of it trashed lately, but they had 300 billion. And they have more billionaires than, they have a lot more. Scientology only has maybe one billionaire.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Maybe. I say maybe. They only have one. I say maybe because I don't think he's in Scientology anymore. I think he's left his wife. And he's with his partner now, his business partner. I think they're married. And but nobody mentioned it because his family they just turned it all over to his wife. This guy named Bob Duggan. He's donated, that family's donated 300 million. So probably second to Tom Cruise, but they don't publish Tom's donations because it's too scary for everybody. Like, oh shit, I could never do that. It's like, it's hard to donate Tom Cruise money. That's my speculation.
So you join, you're heading up the production department of Golden Era Productions.
Well, I'm not heading up the production
videos.
department. I mean,
you're a part of the team that right?
Yeah, it's I'm in charge of making the technical training films.
Gotcha.
This is
Yeah.
this thing that Harvard said Scientology is not going to expand, not going to continue on unless this mission is fulfilled.
Right.
This mission had never been fulfilled.
So at that point in
People,
time, are those training videos like what? How are they used in in training sessions?
yeah, no,
Are they
I could
sold in the test centers on
no, I can
as
tell you exactly
DVDs
no
or
because no, these are very highly regarded, purposeful pieces of what Miscavige would come to call Scientology scripture. When he started to, feast on religious protection, he kind of converted, he brought in this religious nomenclature. He was the
yeah,
ecclesiastical leader. We were parishioners. It sort
right,
of happened overnight. It was all of a sudden we were like, whoa. When I first got in,
right,
they weren't pushing the whole church thing. It was kind of a counterculture
yeah,
philosophy. It
yeah,
was very different. So, but anyway, these films. So in Scientology, if you want to become an auditor,
hmm
and a lot of people take these courses, even if they don't intend to be auditors, because they believe that the information you learn on the course will help you in life because you're learning communication skills, right? You're learning
right,
things that
yeah,
you as a corporate, whatever you want to say, trainer, leader,
yep,
uh, would look at it and go, "Oh yeah, those kind of drills. That'd be great to have people get together and do. Staying on point, getting your question answered,
hmm
being there, being present. All these things are like, there's nothing wrong with that. But then there's those things which are the physical human interaction communication skills. And then there's this thing. I don't have one here. I threw mine away. Um, then there's the e-meter, right? This machine that they use to verify your truth. But what it does is it gives them a chance to invalidate your truth. It's one of the most mental health stealing practices ever developed because you've got this
right,
needle and it does something. I mean, I made films about it. I believe it's not just
yeah,
sweat, what people say, but the body is an electrical,
yeah.
uh,
Well,
it's
that's how
running
they get
and
you in. I mean, there has to be some wins. There has to, L. Ron
yeah,
Hubbard
no,
was not an
there's a
unintelligent
lot.
man. I mean,
Oh
he
no,
understood common
no,
sense things.
he found a way to sort of repackage and regurgitate a lot of
Yeah,
very practical, very
yeah,
helpful tools, right?
yes, yeah,
And he found a way to sucker people into it. So then
yeah,
half of the films, 10 of the films deal with, no, 14 of the films or 16 of the films, sorry, deal
hmm
with the communication skills, and then 10 of the films deal with using the e-meter, right?
right,
So you learn these skills on a course in Scientology. The bridge, Scientology has all of their stuff laid out on this chart. On one side, you have a spiritual path, and the other
hmm
side, you have a path of training. And you could just go up the spiritual side,
yeah,
pay as you go, or you can just you can do both, right?
right.
And so, in order to see these films, you have to be enrolled on one of those courses. Nobody gets to see them.
Okay, so it's not like
Yeah.
something that they're not mass produced. They're not mailed out to
No,
every public
no, they
Scientologist at
are.
their home. Like,
Yeah, no,
please watch this by next Friday,
no,
kind of
no,
thing. There's
absolutely
nothing
not.
like that.
I mean,
Okay.
I should have prepared it. Maybe next time we will. But I did a video in I think it was 2014. I produced a video. The films were all shot on film. I also did some stuff shot on video. We make a distinction. Like, we don't call our films movies. When I was in Scientology, you wouldn't say,
hmm
"Oh yeah, did you see that Scientology movie?" We don't make movies. We make films. It's a very kind of snobby, ridiculous kind of differentiation. Um, I guess a movie is something you watch while you eat popcorn. I don't really get it, but
Right.
oh wow, I lost my train of thought. Just went somewhere around. That's my ADHD. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I've never been diagnosed.
Well, I can
So
jump in with you. Are you back? You got it?
no, what was I
Oh, it's
saying?
gone? Well, we can. So, just so I'm clear and just so everybody's clear,
Yeah,
L. Ron Hubbard wrote all of these
26.
26 films in
Oh yeah, I
advance.
know what I was going to say. I know
Oh,
what I was going to
good.
say. So I made this really a propaganda film. I
Yep.
didn't start doing propaganda for them until in big time until 2008. when
Gotcha.
when the anonymous protest hit. That's when I started doing that. Before then, I did some
Oh,
TV ads and stuff.
is there a reason why? Bear with me, Mitch. I'm just going to turn this light
Sure.
off. Is there a
Yeah, no problem.
reason? Um, is there a correlation between that, between you starting the propaganda and anonymous? How did that work?
Can we just put that aside and finish? Put a
Yeah,
pin in that.
absolutely.
As
Yeah,
they say, I hate this language, but as they say, Crystal, let's put a pin in that and circle back. Okay. So
we'll
that
park
at
it
the end
for
of the
now.
day, we can jump out of the box and blah 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 blah. I'm pretty good with cliches. So yeah. So anyway, I did this video. Yeah. So this was after it's kind of connected, but after Anonymous, there was a massive effort to rescue Scientology's reputation on the internet, which is
Yep.
impossible because a
Yeah.
kid with a YouTube channel and a cell phone could do more, make a bigger splash than they could spending. I can't tell you. I mean, the best SEO people, search engine optimization, the best reputation management people. Like one firm, 100 grand a month, top the people who like invented SEO are brought in. I am willing to bet you money that the Church of Scientology owns more unique IP addresses than any company, than any organization on the entire planet. By the
Right.
time you're done with all the churches and all the organizations and all, it's insane. So yeah, as part of that, there was a whole effort to create this universe on the internet of Scientology.org. Then after that, it was let's export that to the churches in what's called the public information displays. Let's take all of our existing videos, let's make new videos. And then, I spent a lot of time designing. You go into any church and there's about 20 displays and all these high art panels and beautiful graphics. So yeah, so that was when I was kind of done with the tech film thing, then I got like kind of eased over into making propaganda. And then with
Right.
Anonymous, it got big time, and including making propaganda to push against them.
Now, where were you mentally at this point, Mitch? Like around what year was it that
I was spending the
anonymous?
money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're doing a job, you're getting paid to do a job, but you personally, in terms of your journey within Scientology and
Uh,
your
you know,
indoctrination or belief in it, where were you at this point that your role
I was,
transitioned to propaganda?
I'm still trying to unpack that, Krista. I can tell you that like there were very specific things that happened along the way that
Mhm.
were like a wedge that driven between my beliefs. But it was difficult. I was getting older. It was difficult to contemplate the mechanics of disengaging
Yeah.
when that's been your only community and your only
Yeah.
structure and your only career for most of your life. You have to you know deconstructing that engagement and figuring out eventually I just left, and
Yeah.
eventually just disengaging because my plan to make enough money, I'm sorry to sound selfish,
Well,
but
no, why? That's what
I
we
don't,
all do in life is
yeah,
get a
I
job,
know, but
try to make enough money and
there's
like don't I mean it is what it is
yeah, no, I
for
know, but no,
Mitch.
I'm only saying that. Because people are like, I have been accused, and we're not going to get into that, but I have been
Yeah.
accused of, you were paid, you wanted to be here, how dare you? Your trauma means zero. But we're not going to get into that. But, I did try to create a soft exit. I trained somebody to
Mhm.
take care of me. One of the horrible things about what that organization, especially, or what those organizations do to you, is even though you are witnessing abuse with your own eyes,
Mhm.
you are not aware of yeah, there's okay, fine. So you're not aware to the degree that you've been involved in the normalization of
Yeah.
emotional abuse.
Yeah.
You're not aware of it. You don't
Mhm.
know. Uh, so leaving is really difficult, even if you're seeing it. I mean, I don't think what I'm doing now, or anybody in the the SPTV community is doing, is primarily is going to get people out of Scientology
No, it's
unless
gonna
they've been
prevent
abused.
people from going in. Yeah.
Mostly, it's going to do that, but it's
Yeah.
also going to give support and encouragement to
Mhm.
people who've been abused, because it's the abuse that becomes the tipping point. You feel
Right.
it, you see it, and even the demand for engagement on your time and your
Mhm.
money is a form of abuse. So, but you're not really
Well,
aware of it. So I
there's a third prong for me, Mitch, because I feel like
yeah,
those two things are the primary things right now. But I feel like the more people of the more never inners become informed on what Scientology is, um, can start to bring additional awareness to the powers that be or the authorities to start investigating some of these abuses so that we can start seeing David Miscavige brought up on a RICO case like Keith Raniere from Nexium and start seeing some changes. That's my hope.
yeah,
At least. That's my hope.
yeah, right. But the other thing is, I think this is where people that think that I was kind of a bankrupt person because I was my awareness of the true nature of Scientology, my awareness of that, and
Hmm.
my leaving sort of had this overlap. And I
Yeah.
think people that would point that out, like, "Come on, Mitch, you knew you kept taking the money." You know, people that would think
Well,
that.
couldn't everybody kind of say that to a
But
certain extent?
well, no,
Like,
not
I mean,
really.
about, everybody was
No,
complicit while they were in,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's
you
the
know.
joke. And the
And
other
I
thing
think
is
it's really important for all of us to extrapolate the real key factors of all of this. Like everybody's trauma
yeah,
is valid, and we need to extrapolate the fact that Scientology is abusive. It needs to go. Let's
yeah,
prevent and
but
save people from getting in,
yeah,
right?
but yeah, putting that into a package, it goes like this. Anybody would think that does not have any concept of what being in a cult, being indoctrinated, being brainwashed.
Mm,
They don't have any idea. So I don't
yeah,
even know why they would be watching any of this content, except because they want to,
they want to
kind of.
learn or
Well, no,
understand.
because they want to be a social justice
Oh
warrior.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, people who would comment like that. But anyway, let's move on. So yes, there
Okay.
was an overlap between my beginning to contemplate the danger, my having to what do you call it, compartmentalize that knowledge and kind of keep a lid on it so I could figure how the hell do I get out of here,
Hmm.
right? And eventually, I just got out of there, and which is what I should have done to begin with, regardless of money or whatever. I did it kind of late, so I'd sort of aged out of my career and all kinds of other things. And
Yep.
people can say, "Ha ha, too bad, good for you." But when I was researching my book and talking about Leni Riefenstahl, who was the Nazi propagandist, who I had known about since I was in film school, and there's a whole interesting story about that because I discovered while I was at Gold that she'd worked with L. Ron Hubbard, that Hubbard had rewritten a script for her after the war, which is
Hmm.
never made because they're never going to let her make a film. But after those two films, Triumph of the Will and Olympia, were considered, the reason I know about them, we studied them in film school. They're considered to be the greatest propaganda films ever made, right? And
Yep.
when you study them at school, and people don't talk about, well, it's not about her politics. Nobody's talking about that. She said she knew nothing about it. It was just a bunch of bullshit. She absolutely knew. There's irrefutable evidence to that. But I found it was interesting. After the war, she was arrested. She was only held in a camp for 2 weeks, and then they let her out. And
Right.
she was accused of being what's called a Miltläufer. I don't know if I've said that right in German. What that is a Miltläufer in German. That's a person who supports the organization, meaning the Third Reich, not because they believe in it, but because of opportunism or cowardice. Okay, so
Right.
I kind of went through that like, whoa, I'm a Miltläufer. I'm like, when you start to unpack it, you're like, I'm a coward for not leaving. I'm an opportunist for staying.
Right.
Eventually, I think I sorted that out and I made up for it. But anyway,
Well, that's good.
that's the complicated part of it. It's like,
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Leni
I
Riefenstahl,
can imagine.
she
'Cause
said, uh, I just
sorry,
have
go
to
ahead.
add, she
Yeah.
said when she was pressed on the matter, she said, "What do I have to apologize for? My films took the top honors, right? So at least I've apologized." So,
You know what? I totally get being, I have a career in the corporate world. I'm proud of what I do every day. Um,
right.
and I have worked for companies before where, I was committed to the job and I loved what I was doing. Can't say I loved the organization. And then as time went on, I started realizing this isn't a right fit. And then you find the courage to leave because it is scary. I mean, these are
You
livelihoods
don't
we're
run to
talking
your
about.
car. You don't go, "That's it," and you grab your briefcase and
Yeah,
you
no, it's a slow drip process. It's like the frog in boiling hot water. And I think everybody that one of the, as a never inner, when I listen to everybody that has left Scientology, one of the consistent themes is the questioning, internalization everybody feels about, why did I stay for as long as I did? I saw these things. I did this, or I did that, or I contributed to this. I mean, you can beat yourself up
Right.
forever. I think the important thing is that you've
Well, I
left.
don't.
That makes
Yeah,
me
I don't
feel
beat.
so happy, Mitch.
I don't beat myself up about that at all. I have no shame or
Oh,
guilt
good.
about anything that I did. I
Good.
absolutely don't. I only bring it up because I don't want to get into the comments, but I'm kind of seeing these things go by at
Oh,
the corner of my
just
eye,
so
and I know you
everybody's
don't.
clear, I don't have any moderators, so I do kindly ask that everybody, if you have a question, put capital question in front of it, just so that I can flag it, so that I can see it quick, because I'm trying to pay attention to what Mitch is saying rather than the comments. So I
Yeah.
apologize. If anybody has something that they want flagged, please post it. But please keep the comments just kind. You know, we're
Well,
kind.
I don't particularly. Yeah, I don't particularly. Yeah. So people they can say whatever they want, but it's like,
Well,
most of what they're saying has nothing to do with me. It's a reflection on them. So let's get back to the story.
yes,
So,
let's. Well, I do want to ask. So we're kind of jumping, like we've done like the beginning. We've talked about Golden Era Productions, your work there, these 26 films. You worked on the last 10, I believe it was, didn't you? Was it the last 9,
well,
10?
no, I actually did them all.
Okay. So
And I
then
did
you
one.
kind of steer in, sorry, then you kind of steer it, like David Miscavige is wanting to steer you a little bit into propaganda.
No,
Propaganda. I'm curious.
I wouldn't say steer is not the right word. I would say
Okay. What would you
you need
say?
to get up. You need to get up. To the office right now. So
Oh, oh,
it was more like that.
cracked the whip on. Okay, got it. So I'm curious about one of the things that I saw on a recent live with the audit, the streets LA, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it was when Aaron was in Hollywood and he was outside the test center. There's this big, huge screen, and I
Mhm.
gotta say, Mitch, I was shocked. I was shocked because whoever I was watching live put the camera up on this big screen, and it didn't occur to me. I think being in Canada, like the Super Bowl ads, which we can talk about shortly, but the Super Bowl ads in Canada, I never once in all of these years, I mean, I was at Super Bowl parties every year. I'd watch the Super Bowl. I never once saw a Scientology ad. So I said this on a previous live with Sterling, and I've
Mhm.
come to understand that perhaps it wasn't aired in Canada, which is maybe why we didn't see it.
Well,
Well, I've never seen a Scientology commercial or anything. I've never been to LA. I've never been to a
yeah.
Scientology test center. So this live was my first line of sight to the quality of these videos. And one was about brushing your teeth. One was about,
Well, yeah, that's the way to happiness, which is like
yeah,
I think there's
it was
20. Yeah, it's really
shocked me.
stupid. Like who needs to be told not to murder people and to brush their teeth?
Yes,
But
or to not be promiscuous or whatever the case may be.
yeah, I know.
There's so much
Yeah,
to it.
that was
It
the
just
work
shocked
coming
me.
out of my department. That was a young director who was working under me that I brought up there, who
Yeah.
whatever, and I sort of produced that video. But that specific project wasn't mine.
And
But that's very.
where did they come from? Like, whose brainchild was that to decide, okay, we're now going to put out these commercials?
Oh,
Um,
that was absolutely David Miscavige, but it really comes from Hubbard because he was such a narcissist that he wanted everything he ever wrote, even essays and articles, to be put on film
yeah,
because he just thought that was the best way to show things to people. I sent
right.
you a couple of links to some
Yeah.
of his essays that I put onto film, so for the TV network.
And
But
I did
yeah,
watch The Way to Happiness, and I was
yeah,
quite surprised. There were some things that were like stand out to me just based on some of the
yeah.
things I've come to understand about Scientology. I thought, well, that's a bit contradictory. Like when
Oh
I
no,
found
it's a
some of the
total
things.
look. Listen, Chris said Scientology is a bottomless pit of hypocrisy. I mean,
Yes.
that's what you're seeing. I mean,
Yeah.
the way to happiness, which is Hubbard, he could write in this like a very sort of warm, fuzzy, lyrical, formal style, and he talk about how, you know, sex is a beautiful thing, but you need to have constancy and blah blah blah.
Mhm.
And then you're in the Sea Org, and then you're put in a slave labor camp for masturbating. So
Right.
it's a little bit of
Yeah.
hypocrisy there.
Well, and you
So
know what, what one really stood out to me was the one about paying attention and really focusing on the development of your children to teach them
yeah,
to become more. And I thought, are you
I'm sorry.
kidding me? all
Yeah,
of
I'm
like
sorry to
the
laugh.
double standard of all of these kids at the Sea Orgs or the Int Ranch, or that were just
Yeah, no,
dismissed and left to the side.
but yeah, but listen,
Yeah.
I almost just burst into tears when I hear about this, when I go here. But I raised two children until teenagers in Scientology. I was gone a lot. Like I was like, I was like an NFL dad, right? Except at least they
Yeah.
have a season. I knew a
Oh,
guy,
and
an
yours
actor.
was 365.
Yeah, at least they have a
Yeah.
season, so at least they know. Mine was like, except for weekends and when the crew was engaged doing other things, like creating these events for David Miscavige to be worshipped publicly in front of his members. So, but the thing about being a parent in Scientology is you just don't see your kids, because
Hmm.
your relationship in Scientology with children is so transactional. But even though on the surface you have this book, The Way to Happiness, to guide you, it really is a horrible tragedy. It's a travesty. There hasn't been children in the Sea Org in probably 20 years, so
Yeah. Yeah.
at least that's done. I mean, when the because yeah. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about all that stuff, but um,
So in terms of
yeah, yeah. But there's still, my point was, there haven't been children in the Sea Org in 20 years.
right.
They won't take anybody unless they're 18 and they have a high school diploma, because it's just too much trouble for them. I mean, they
Well,
got to
that's really
assign.
interesting because that's going to end up, that's a war. I mean, it's become a war of attrition as far as Scientology is concerned. They're not going to have any staff at the Sea Org. I mean, they're all aging out and
No, yeah, but they're what do you call it? They're the parishioners. Yes, the parishioners. The members, the people that are engaged, not in the Sea Org, not on. They have children.
hmm
And I remember, this is so funny. I just remember David Miscavige telling me in one of our many one-to-one conversations, we're talking about staff. This was back in the days when he was planning the ideal orgs and all that kind of stuff. And he was saying, he was musing about, back in the period of the Renaissance, back in that time, people would have big families and they'd always give a son to the church. They'd always want a son to be a priest, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is probably true. Like, it's probably not just, in other very Catholic, places, other cultures, Irish Catholic, you're really proud to have my son. I have a son, he's a priest, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you see it in dramatic presentations. Your one son is a gangster, one son is a priest. So, and he
Yes.
was
Oh
kind of,
my gosh.
yeah, and he was kind of musing about this, like, and he was really inferring that Scientologists, they should gladly be willing to give one of their children to the Sea Org.
Right.
So, you see what I'm saying? So that was kind
Yeah.
of the mindset. So a
So
lot
do you
of the
think that
staff,
still exists today then, like with
yeah,
the
I do.
public
Well, a lot of this, well,
Scientologists?
yeah, because it's promoted, because it's kind of like, in a lot of families, not in my family, because I, thankfully, because of my position, I had
Hmm.
like, like in Passover, I was raised Jewish, but in Passover, you took the bone of a lamb, and and you drew blood cross over your door, and that would
Yeah.
keep the angel of death out. Well, I had the equivalent of that to keep the Sea Org out of my house,
Gotcha.
because we didn't want our kids to go anywhere near the Sea Org. And they stayed away because they knew, now we can't recruit his kids because he works at Gold. Da, da, da,
Right.
and for some, yeah, and I made a big stink about it, and they left my kids alone.
Good.
But
Well, you're
anyway,
lucky then.
well, yeah, we just didn't want them to engage with that,
Yeah.
because we wanted our kids to be have agency over their lives, to be mindful. We didn't care if they didn't decide to go into Scientology.
Yeah.
We were like these liberal, pro-gay Scientologists. There was this narrow streak of us, and I think we're all gone. I don't think
Right.
there's anybody left, because it's just become so horrific, what we were actually missing in the whole thing. So, but yeah, my point is that sure, it's a tragedy. What happened to the kids in the Sea Org is horrible, and they all
Hmm.
need to heal, and they need to find healing, and they need to find justice. Fortunately, there haven't been kids children born in,
Yeah.
especially into the Sea Org, or in the Sea Org under 18, in a long, long time. It's too big a problem for them, because, if they have a minor in the Sea Org, they have to assign them a legal guardian.
Right. Yeah.
And then that gets into all kinds of legal problems because they have to be actually the guardian of the person, and they never were. They just kind of like somebody would sign a piece of paper that they're the guardian, and the kid might be shipped to Australia while the
Oof.
guardian's in England. So it's just
Right.
like they couldn't handle it because it was
Hmm.
the truth about that. So they stopped doing that, which was a good thing. So,
Yeah.
um, but they still have, their potential victim pool are all the quote unquote public Scientologists
Yeah.
did have children, and that, when the kids get to a certain age, like they're going to graduate high school,
Hmm.
you tell them, I told my kids this, go to college, get a
Yep.
job, but if you want me to support you, you're going to have to be on course studying Scientology, doing Scientology full time. If you want that's like, there's not
Yep.
another option, right?
Right.
Like, because it's kind of like a lot of parents are that way. Yeah, you're going to go to college, you're going to get a job. You're not going to live here and be a freeloader,
Hmm.
right?
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
In Scientology, you would add to that
Right.
becoming a Scientologist. And so for some people, that might mean joining the Sea Org or going on staff, which is a much shorter commitment.
Right.
So yeah, it's horrible what happens to children in Scientology. That's one of the things that really bugs me, other than kind of mistakenly giving up the best years of my career. Maybe not. I think I have a few left, but also just bringing children up in that environment.
Yeah. That was actually one of my questions for you, Mitch, how you felt about having dedicated so many years of your professional life to Scientology. Do you feel Are you pissed off about that? I mean, to put it
No,
blunt.
I mean, people talk about the money I made. It's such a ridiculous joke because when you put it in context and you figure in taxes and you figure in the fact that I had to pay for everything, because unlike, as you know, employers generally provide, support for but I
Yeah.
had none of that. I had no health care. I had no pension. I had
Right.
no nothing. I had a family of four,
Yep. And a separate
and
household, right? Like,
yeah, and people might say, well, boy, that's a real first world problem,
right.
but
Yeah.
they're not really looking at it. They're just kind of looking at it from, their own point where they're like, and my life's, their life's miserable and they don't know where their pain comes from. So this is a great place to find a proxy for their pain. And then, they want to throw a beer bottle at their screen, which is fine. Go ahead. So,
Wow.
so that's kind of my attitude about that. So, but you asked me about, do I regret it? No, I regret doing drugs at 15 because that's what led me into Scientology.
Oh, I see. Oh, you're
You get
linking
what
it
I'm
back to
saying? I
that
don't.
then. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I'm thinking about. It's more important to understand what led you into something because that's where the
Gotcha.
problem is. That's the
Right.
problem that I had to solve when I left Scientology. Right? People want
Yeah.
to talk all about. There's no problem. They want to talk all about the Scientology or the money, and
Yeah.
you did it willingly. But I walked into Scientology with a lot of trauma, and
Gotcha.
guess what? Scientology didn't handle it, and I walked out with it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was not an easy path by any sense of the imagination. But I'm not here to tell my story as a victim at all. I'm here to tell it as a person that was informed
Mhm.
by what I did and then had to process it. And a lot of that was in decoding what was actually in the films I made. Because when I
Mhm.
was finally able to process a lot of my own indoctrination and then look back at those films, I had some startling realizations about the content of those films and the effect that would have on people. And the
Right.
tragedy is a lot of the intelligence that I've revealed around this, which is, I consider whistleblowing,
Yep.
people have then taken that and said, "Oh, you did that," and then used it to accuse you of doing it. But they wouldn't even know that I did that if I didn't tell them what I did. So it's kind of
Oh,
like,
just ignore that
but
stuff.
yeah, no, I do, but I have to put that out there because
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't want to get into all that. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in those films
Hmm.
that both very secretly or in a subtle way reveal Hubbard's attitudes about women,
Yeah.
culture, law.
Oh, for sure.
Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
I mean, you know the
yeah,
content better than I do. I'm only speaking to the even the way to happiness that I watched. It was very, very
yeah,
insightful. And I've never really sat down and read Hubbard policies or anything like that or
yeah. Well, the technical training films are really their own beast. I think one of my more kind of pointed moments about them is I did this one film. I did it twice. I did it the first time with Jason Begay.
Mhm.
Jason left. I had to do it over with somebody else. So I know this film really well.
Yep.
And I've spoken about this before, and I mentioned it earlier. The basic plot of this film, it takes place in the near future on a ship like a patrol craft, like the Coast Guard, Navy in the future. They're on a spaceship, and they pick up a guy who was marooned on a planetoid, and he's very distressed, and he's insane. He's gone and been driven insane, and so they want to lock him up. Right now, keep in mind, they want to lock him up. Okay,
Okay.
and they want to when they at the first base they come to, they want to turn him over to the authorities, right? And it just so happens that the chaplain on the ship, this would be like a Navy kind of Coast Guard. I thought of it more as the Coast Guard. He happened to be a Scientology auditor, right? Because they're going to survive in the future, and they'll be posted in military positions just like chaplains, right? So the
Okay.
chaplain, and so there's an emergency meeting at the captain's quarters, and the chaplain says, "You want I should give him a session, right?" And the captain says, "Yeah, give him a session." So within this auditing session,
Okay.
this person reveals to the auditor that he had drugged and essayed his best friend's girlfriend, and that's why his best friend, who was his partner on a mining ship, marooned him on the little planet, right?
And L. Ron
So
Hubbard wrote this, just so I'm
yeah,
following
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
here.
This is by L. Ron Hubbard. When I first read it, I was kind of shocked, but I'm like, okay, he's written some pretty, if you read his
Yeah.
science fiction, some of it, he has trans people. They're usually evil, but he has, lots of, he has, you read Mission Earth, there's like cross-dressing, trans, weird stuff, but they're always sort of they're not the good guys in his books, but, he's written some
Right.
crazy things, right? So I'm
Well,
like,
he's
okay,
certainly not shy about revealing his perspective on
well,
certain.
no, unless you're caught holding hands on the bus on the way home, then all of a sudden you're going to be maybe sent to a labor camp. But so anyway, I made this film, and I made it tastefully, and so then let me see. The news about Danny Masterson trial came out in 2017,
Yep.
and then I was uh, transitioning out 2019, 2020. And one of the first things I did when I sort of read the crimes, the Danny Masterson case, and I was like, does anybody get the fact that that training film basically says Scientology auditing has the power to reform the criminal, and to then at the end of the film, he says he's all tearful, and he's all repentant, and blah blah blah, and he says, I'm going to go find that girl and get her some Scientology auditing and make sure she's okay. And I'm going to find my friend too. So basically, the entire message of this film, the subtext, is that Scientology auditing is so powerful. You can reform the criminal and you can heal the victim. And
Right.
why would you ever send somebody to the authorities?
Oh,
So this is like, so then
yeah.
I remember I called up Aaron Smith Levinan because he would have seen this film. He was a technical secretary at a couple of orgs in Los Angeles. And I said, "Hey, Aaron, did you saw the short title of the film is called TR13, Training Routine Film Number 13. The long-term name was The Session." And I
Mhm.
said, "Hey, remember TR13? Did you ever see it?" He said, "Yeah, I saw it 100 times." I said, "Did you ever see a parallel between that film and the Danny Masterson case?" He went, "Oh my God." So it was that kind of
Right.
buried messaging that like he didn't even
Yeah.
see it. So,
Subtle. It's subtle. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
so and at the end of that film, these other space sailors that wanted the guy thrown in and locked up, they're all
Mhm.
hanging out in the cafeteria and they're singing folk songs, right? And it's a happy, joyful moment. And so, I started a conversation about that, about like,
Mhm.
yeah, and there's other things as well. I've written a lot of them in my book about how there's this coding, this sort of, there's some very racist, misogynistic, anti-gay,
Yeah.
and anti sort of protect criminal coding in these films. So in these, these indoctrination films. So
So do you look back now, Mitch, at some of your material and just obviously since you've left Scientology and you've been out 4 years now, correct? Is it 4 years?
yeah, I mean, I stopped interacting with them when the pandemic hit, and I did a few
Yeah.
little writing jobs after that because I didn't really want to say, you know what, f off, you're evil, go away. So
Right.
then I, at some point, I started writing a book out of my own self-preservation, and then I'm like, I just didn't care. My book was F off, right?
Yeah.
I
Well, you
was
were free
sort of
then, right? Like COVID kind of gave
not
you that
really. I
perfect.
wasn't free. I wasn't free at all. I was just free of Scientology.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
I wasn't. Yeah, but I was never really like, so people have pointed out that I was not restricted to a Sea organization base like the Sea Org members were, which is true. There were times I was restricted,
Yeah, but you
just
were
because
still indoctrinated to the
yeah,
philosophy of
I know.
Scientology to a certain
Yeah, I know.
extent.
We were all in the prison of belief.
Yeah, it's still the
Thank you,
same
Lawrence
prison.
Wright, for that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, nonetheless, it wasn't. I didn't have to make some kind of dramatic physical escape. Though, if you read about because I don't want to. It's a
Well, I
long
don't know
story,
if
but
that's a fair statement to make because then we could just say the same thing or paint, a brushstroke across every public Scientologist that exists today. And they're not leaving, they're still staying in. So I think again what I said before, I think it's important for the never-inners that are starting to understand Scientology to better extrapolate what's important from all of these stories. It's not who had it better
yeah,
than the other, who was able to leave and this person
yeah,
wasn't. What's
yeah,
important is the
yeah,
fact that Scientology is an abusive, high controlled brainwashing cult. And that's what's
yeah,
important. No matter how you spin it or whose story, everybody's trauma and story is equally as important.
yeah.
In
I
my
think
opinion, I can't speak
yeah,
for everyone, but
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I never even imagined that there was such a thing as trauma comparing or trauma shaming or
mhm,
I just
yeah.
so anyway, but we're not here to talk about that. But yeah, so that's basically that's pretty much the deal.
Okay,
That's kind of
so
it.
when you since you've since, my question for you is, it was only 4 years ago that you left. Do you find that there was like what was the culture like at Scientology? Like over an hour now, so we'll try to. I've got about three more questions for you,
Well,
Mitch. I just want to keep you
yeah,
for three more questions.
yes,
Um,
I'm good. I have time.
okay, what would you say the culture changes or the evolution of the culture was, the first 10 years you were in there versus the latter 10 years that you were there? Was it drastically different underneath Hubbard's
Well,
ruling versus Miscavige? Better, worse, the same? What'd you say?
it was a lot easier not to see things, if that makes sense. It was when Miscavige took over, his rise to power. With that, everything changed.
Yeah.
I'm really cautious about saying that because nobody should think we should go back to how it was before Miscavige was there, because it was
Yeah.
not good, and all of the DNA for where it went is there, and it's the arc, everybody's journey, especially a professional like me. And I did have a really unique story because I was the first. I got those films done. Nobody else had ever done that. I held a very high position over Sea Org members
Hmm.
who, if you go and talk to them, they'll tell you that and a lot of them left and became a number of them left and became very successful in media. And when I left, they reached and thanked out to me and
Oh,
reached
that's
out to me
nice.
and then thanked me because of working with me, gave them confidence
Well, that's
and
nice.
courage to leave. Yeah, it was really nice. That's kind of the only legacy I have.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like loath to talk about that because people might interpret that as, oh, he treated the slaves better than somebody else. But that's not really the point because we were comrades working in the
Hmm.
same trenches. And I
Hmm.
felt very protective about some of these young people. They were younger than me who were, you know, before I arrived, and I didn't know this, they were all reporting to the galley every day, and they were
Right.
scrubbing the floors and cleaning the grease out of the fryer. And once we started making films, the whole place transformed. Like I didn't
Right.
know any of this.
Right.
I only knew it from the moment that that I saw it. I was like, "What the hell is with all this?" I asked the script supervisor, who became a good friend of mine. I said, "How come nobody up here ever wants to be a director? I mean, like nobody's even applying for the job. Like I'm like,
Hmm.
why did you guys hire me?" And the answer was, "Well, because you can get in too much trouble doing that." And that speaks to the culture. In other
Yeah, for
words,
sure. Yeah.
they did everything Hubbard said to do, and the best they could do is a really bad job.
Yeah.
Part of that is because there was no oxygen in the room.
Hmm.
And the reason there was no oxygen in the room is B, the price of failure is very high. And
Right.
that kind of defines the culture of the Sea Org.
Yeah.
Is there's such a high price on failure that you become you're going to survive better if you become, this is not me, but in the Sea Org, if you're going to become just a nasty person.
Hmm.
You get what I'm saying? Because you want to
Yeah.
be on the side that says you failed. You
Right.
don't want to be on the side of somebody telling you you failed. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you see what I'm saying? It breeds
Yeah. No,
that. So
absolutely.
so you
Yeah.
you train up as an auditor, and now you're training people, and now you're just really harsh to them because
Yeah.
now you have you have the power to say you failed, flunk,
Well, it's
big
not just
words.
the power, it's the expectation that's filtering down from above, that's how
Yeah,
you
absolutely. Yeah,
respond
yeah,
to
but
insubordination or
yeah, it
mistakes.
is.
It's not
It
just,
is.
for some, it might be a choice. Like some people that are in Scientology that really might have some issues and get off on treating people that way. But I think a big part of that is cultural. It
Yeah,
does
no, for the most part,
filter
it's not.
downhill.
There are these people, and me and some other people know who they are. We could
Hmm.
give you a list. There are people who were at the imp base. The imp base is now a toothless, you know, backwater production facility that makes shiny objects for the Scientology
Right.
TV network. It's no longer the seat of international power for Scientology. That's in LA now. And all of the old leaders they've been defanged and declawed and given crappy jobs, right? And
Hmm.
Miscavige now, today he runs Scientology the way Putin runs Russia with all of these oligarchs and
Yeah.
except
Yeah.
they're all in fear that they're going to lose their stuff any second, and they do.
Yeah.
But
Well, and there's a
uh,
certain level of compartmentalization that happens too in these type of organizations or any type of, you know, uh, withholding information. Like I'm sure there are a lot of current, I don't know, I'm speaking, this is just my perspective. I don't know for sure, but I would suspect that there's a lot of public Scientologists today like Scientologists in good standing that have no idea about some of the abuses or
no
the
idea,
labor
no idea.
abuses or the
They
trafficking
have
that goes on at the Sea Org. Just like there are so many ex-Scientologists a part of the SPTV community that were literally floored to hear of some of like the essaying that went on with some of the kids. They had no
right,
idea. So that's what
right,
keeps, you combine that fear of repercussion, of,
right.
that culture. You combine that with this strategic compartmentalization that keeps all of the different departments uninformed on everything. So that there can't be a mutiny and everybody stand out and say, this is wrong, we're leaving.
Oh
They
no, no,
just
no,
keep
no, no.
everybody blind to it.
Yeah.
So
The Catholics in America did that. If you saw the movie Spotlight,
I
that's what
did.
that was
Yeah.
about. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what that was about. The Catholic parishioners
Yeah.
were really up in arms and they wanted reforms within the Catholic Church, and they
Yeah.
got it. That
Yeah.
cannot happen in Scientology. Plus, even if these people, as long as you're in good standing and your head is in that space,
Hmm.
you're not going to see the abuse, even if it's right in front of your face.
Right.
You know,
Well, that's the brilliant part of LRH's policies. Like he almost plants that insidious idea that anybody that talks against or tries to dissuade you from your beliefs, that was actually in the Way to Happiness video, trusting
yeah,
your beliefs. And I literally
it's
laughed
what's
out
true for
loud.
you.
I thought, are you
Yeah,
kidding me right now? Like trusting your beliefs, like if somebody watched that through the lens of somebody not indoctrinated by the under the
right.
cloud of Scientology, they'd realize how ludicrous that
Oh
is.
yeah, that the Way to Happiness, the book and that film were birthed from this warm, moist cocoon of emotional support that
Mhm.
Scientology is able to conjure to
Right.
make certain people feel good. The other thing I have to, before I forget, there's a thing that I want to mention about abuse, the abuse we were talking about. People don't know that abuse exists on a scale. And I don't mean from a lot of abuse to a little abuse. I mean,
Mhm.
sure, that's its own scale. But what I mean is from the people who within that group have privilege and the
Yep.
people who have no privilege, there is a misconception that the people with privilege are somehow escaping the abuse, and the people with no privilege And obviously I'm referring to Sea Org members who are
Yeah,
restricted to
yeah,
the base and so forth. They're the ones that really have that abuse is the abuse. And as you go up the
yeah,
scale, the abuse kind of lessens, and where you're just being love bombed all the time.
yeah.
Somebody needs to explain to me how love bombing is not abuse. Okay,
Well, it
because
is. I mean,
of course
it's
it is.
the beginning
It's one of the
stages of
worst
coercive
kinds of
control.
abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
think for everybody, I mean, this is just my perspective, Mitch. Really, I can't speak to the viewers or the other never inners, but anybody that I've
uh,
spoken to, I mean, you can't, there is no positive weight at all in identifying, who did what and what. There's just no weight in it. To me, it seems I understand
yeah. I mean,
everybody. Do you know what I mean? I think all
no,
it
no,
does is
totally,
distract all of
totally.
us
Yeah. Well,
from
what happens is
the end goal.
it breaks up into tribalism,
Hmm.
and the people that are started out as activists end up becoming idols themselves, and then the whole mission is lost. Like whatever the whole mission was, is just lost. It's just lost in the mess.
Yeah.
So
And I
I've
mean,
been
even as I say this, this doesn't mean that I have empathy for every single ex Scientologist that has come out. Every time I hear a story, it breaks my heart, because all of
right.
them are pretty damn brutal. And all it does is just reinvigorate and reinforce my drive for wanting to get the authorities and the powers that be to identify the abuses of this organization, remove their religious freedom, get the tax exemption gone, save the people that are in there, prevent new people from joining. That is my goal, while
Yeah,
at the same time empathizing with every single ex-Scientologist story, because they're
yeah,
all valuable,
yeah,
they're all traumatic, and I don't exercise any amount of time in evaluating which trauma is more involved than the
yeah,
other.
yeah.
They're all
It's
the same to me.
yeah. There's yeah, exactly. I mean, some might be worse than others. I
Oh, of
mean, like,
course, yeah.
and some are easy to recover from. I was talking about the difficulty I had,
Easier.
and yeah, easier. And somebody commented to me once, a commenter, I don't remember who it was, just somebody watching, that they had been a Scientologist for 20 years. They spent 4 years in the Sea Org, and they didn't have much trouble leaving once they left. And I
Mhm.
asked them, I said, "Did you have a job? Did you have a family? Did you have emotional support? Did you?" I asked this in a nice way, and they said, "Yeah." And that really is the difference. A
Yeah,
lot of it is what you're leaving into as much as what you're leaving.
yeah.
Some of us left into nothing. I had no friends. I was estranged from my family. I was
Mhm.
giving up my job. Most of the money I ever had was gone in taxes and divorce and
Yeah.
bad judgment, and the rest of it I guess I spent on, I don't know, sex workers and cocaine. No, that's a joke. That's totally a joke. That's just my
That's
weird
gonna get
boomer
clipped,
age.
Mitch. That's gonna
Yeah,
get
I
clipped.
know. People are gonna put that up as a shirt. Like, right. Yeah. So anyway,
You know
when
what?
am I
I
gonna
think
learn my lesson?
based on what you
But my
just said,
point,
all the more reason that those foundations are so important, and I
yeah,
know Aaron's
because
coming out
it's
with
there.
his.
Yeah, there is a what you leave into can be just
Mhm.
as serious as what you are leaving, because some
Yeah.
people are leaving into nothing. Some people are they're leaving into and they're leading into support,
Mhm.
family, jobs, opportunities, and then they can begin to do the work without having all the distractions. Not everybody's
Mhm.
that lucky.
Yeah. Well, if LRH made it easy for people to leave, Scientology wouldn't exist today.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact. Yeah.
It's going to be, even for those that have a place to stay or a soft bed to lay on at the end of the day, they still probably just walked away from a ton of family and friends, or every friend they've ever known, a job.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't even fathom it, Mitch. I really can't. I just moved from Canada to the UK, and it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done.
Right.
And I still talk to my family on FaceTime and my friends on
Right.
FaceTime, and
Right.
and still can get on a plane and go home and see them. I can't imagine a world where that entire line of communication would have been
Yeah, we
cut off.
just had to yeah, you just
Yeah,
had to
I
do that.
can't imagine. And
Yeah,
yeah.
but I mean, I fortunately, I don't have any family. I mean, my former wife, my kid's mom, she has family that are still in Scientology.
Hmm.
So there's that. Um, she's not in Scientology anymore, and that's never been a problem for everybody, and everything is. We haven't, like yeah, I mean, and nobody in my family, like my former wife, my kids, said nobody's in Scientology,
Oh,
and
well, that's good.
I don't have any business connections or anything like that in
Yeah.
Scientology, so I don't have to deal about that. But I'd already become estranged from my family in Scientology. I was divorced. That was my only work, so I kind of already was sort of disconnected. And then when I left, then I had like nothing, and
Hmm.
and I have some projects and little things that I'm working on and trying to rebuild and whatever, and they're all kind of in the direction of help, like real help, like helping to support marginalized communities, uh,
Hmm.
while at the same time being potentially lucrative entertainment. I mean, when I left Scientology, just before we go, I took an oath, like a literal oath with myself, that I was going to stand for a world in which there was less harm,
Hmm.
because Scientology is, if you wanted to put it into one word, it's harmful.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do, and I'm not just. Some of that is in the space as a former Scientologist. Most of it's not,
Right.
because there's a lot of harm in the world, and there's a lot of underrepresented people.
Hmm. Well, I know that too. I say that all the time when I talk to people. Yeah, but saying that there's a lot of this is just me talking out, thinking out loud here,
Right,
Mitch.
right, uh-huh.
I see harm in the world all day long, and every single one of them fire me up. I mean, it's easy to just get to feel dissuaded and think, "Oh my God, there's so many. Where do I start?" You just
Right.
one chip it
Well,
away,
you
one chip
start
at a time. You
you
start.
start by making the decision that you're
Yeah,
not gonna contribute to harmful
yeah,
things, and then that's that.
absolutely. Well, Mitch, this has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
Like, I think I could talk to you for like 2 hours. Like,
Well,
really,
please bring me back.
I would
I'll do
love
it
that.
gladly. I mean, I'll bet you we barely dented your questions, because we
No,
probably
we
just
did.
cut off.
I have 36 questions on the list.
Wow,
And
that's generous.
I think we made through about 12. So there's
Okay.
there's definitely a lot of questions. I do have a hard stop at 9:30. So I have taken a look at the chat here to see if there was any questions, but I couldn't see any. Thank you so much to everybody joining and for all of the comments and feedback. I don't see any particular questions though, but what I will do is when we end it, I will go back through all of the comments. And if I did miss any, then I'll respond or I'll forward them on to you, Mitch.
Great.
Or
No problem. I'll answer them.
go ahead and post them for anybody that's in the live that did ask a question that I might have missed because I did take my glasses off like an old fool here. So go into the comments on the actual video rather than the live chat and repost it if you
Right,
don't mind. And Mitch and I will both get back to them. So yeah.
right.
Mitch, is there anything else you wanna say before
No,
we sign off?
I think it's pretty much covered. I have a small dog that's in his crate, and he's freaking out, so this is maybe a
Aw,
good time to stop.
oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, Mitch. I've had a
You're
lovely time.
welcome.
Let's do this again. And thanks so much to everybody that's watching and that has hung out with us for the entire video. I really appreciate it. More to come.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
yeah, we'll have you back, Mitch, and we'll do it
Thank you
again.
very much. Okay,
Bye,
take care.
everybody. You too.